Yasher Koyach for the privilege of learning a little bit of the Rebbe's Holy Father's Torah. I had the schus to be at the Oil over Shabbos. I was traveling today. I didn't have the time I would have liked to prepare Inyan properly. I really and truly to learn even a small piece of the Rebbe's Torah takes at least takes me 5 to 7 hours to properly go through all the Marmakemis and understand the profundity. In the copies that are made, it's a little bit mitzutat, and they open up simply with a statement which actually doesn't say in the Makar. In the Sefer doesn't say that. They start off with something. I don't have the copy in front of me now, but it says something to the effect of that the Shulchan is the Inyan of Yichud Zun. So that's not the Rebbe's father's lashon. The Rebbe does not say the Shulchan is the Inyan of Yichud Zun. The Rebbe's father didn't write that at all. It's not based on the Inyan of the Shulchan, the design of the Shulchan per se. It's a Torah that's found in the Aris LeMesichtis in Meseches Menachos, and the Rebbe stellt sich on a different Mishnah altogether. His father stellt sich on the Mishnah of Abba Shol. Then you get to the Bazichin, which is the herb or frankincense that was placed on the Lechem Bapanim, and there's a machlekes exactly how it was placed. So the Rebbe's father goes into pratim and prite pratim, and I just want to say that the Rebbetzin Chana told my grandfather, Olav Shalom, that when she came to Almat, when she came to Chile, she came on a Friday, and she sent a telegram to the Rebbe Levik that she was coming, and when she was Friday afternoon, and she told my Zayda, as ich hab gesehen, mein Mann und ich hab nicht erkannt. And she said, bis ich hab gehört sein Kol, hab ich nicht geglaubt, dass es And today we see a little bit of the pictures, the picture we had all along, and then the picture that came out later. You see the difference, like two different people. I'm just going to speak it a little bit, maybe in a Grabe Sprach, because most of us, with the exception of some of the very great Chassidim here, are regular, Basav Dagim, Grabe people. The hafla of the Rebbe's father being in the circumstances that he was, and writing Torah and Chidusha Torah, like incredibly profound, brilliant Chidusha Torah. It's mamash merafsen igra. It's shocking. It's not begeder enushi. It's pashut not begeder enushi. Yeah, we hear stories of people in concentration camps. They put on tefillin. People try to learn a little bit, uplift people around them. But that a person could be mirakez, a human being could be mirakez himself to learn Torah with virtually no svarim, and to without paper, and to be writing in the prolific way that he wrote is totally off the charts, and it's something absolutely astounding. It's just astounding. I mean, like when you start to learn some of the Rebbe's father's Torah, and on occasion I've discussed sometimes to go through a piece and to properly go through it and understand it. It's pashat meida meroyim. There's no words to describe it. You have to know that the Rebbe Levik lived in circumstances. There was no SS guards, and there was there's no crematorium, but he lived with the suffering, mamash, like starvation, physical abuse, emotional abuse. So it was like a concentration camp. Like he lived under horrific conditions. The Rebbe used to speak about the Rebbe's mother, that she would go and collect herbs. My Zayda said, "You don't understand. My Elta Zayda was one town away, 60 kilometers away from Rebbe Levik. He was in a place called Nikurgan. That was the second to the most remote place. And Rebbe Levik was in Chile. Nothing grows in this place. You can't find a blade of grass. The people over there, they eat reindeer. You can't find something green. To find something green, to find something to make ink out of, was Mesiras Nefesh Mamash. And the Rebbe's father lived under such harsh conditions and with so little to eat, barely subsisting. The fact that he had the mental acuity to focus on and learn Torah on this level it's astounding. It's pashut astounding. And the bikiyas that he had, and he writes Mar Mekemis, and he writes Dafim and Favorfene Kabbalah Svarim and Shas and Kisvei Arizal Poskim. it's something that is not bedara deuna. Should not bedara deuna, and I think it's important for us to know this. And who is Rebbe Levik writing for? As I understand, and I try to environ this a little bit, almost everything that we have from the Rebbe's father was produced under these terrible, harsh conditions. Almost everything that we have, except for the Mechtovim and the things that he wrote to the Rebbe, all of the Rebbe's Torah the father's Torah that we have was Torah that was written on the margins of Svarim under the harshest of conditions that's imaginable. And it's just unbelievable. I mean, there's just no words for it. I think we need to know this, and I think we need to appreciate it. And it's almost shocking that nobody kocht sich in the Rebbe's Torah. The Rebbe pleaded, the Rebbe begged us, told us that there's amazing things over here, and very few people. I'm sich reingelegt in the Rebbe's Torah. I mean, David Duba Zachar Latev, that he threw himself into it, and what he's helping us to discover is Pashad Meida Miroim. In the photocopies that they made, they focused literally on a few lines within a very, very long piece. And maybe, I don't know, maybe that's the biggest chiddush of this piece. I'm not so sure. I don't even know if any of us are shaykh to know what's the biggest chiddush or not. But David Dubav, I guess, felt this was the biggest chiddush, or maybe this is the chiddush that was maybe the easiest for us to understand without having the full background. So he put this together in the Yalkut. Akoponim, I think that the background that we have to have over here, which is not at all written in the actual Teres Levi Yitzchak, is that the concept of the Shulchan represents the idea of Parnasa. And this is something which is a Chazal, and it's something which you find in the Rishonim. And the Rebbe and the Shimas HaManeira actually talks about it a number of times. He alludes to this a number of times. So the Rebbe bases it on the Gemara. The Rebbe, interestingly, does not quote the Rishonim, and there are a number of Rishonim that speak about it. The Rebbe bases it on the Gemara in Bava Basra, and Daf Chafei Amud Beis, that the Gemara says, "Hareitza sheyachkim yadrim, u'sheyasha yatzpin." The Simonach, that you have the Shulchan b'tzafen and the Meneira b'darim. So in other words, the Shulchan is the Inyan of Ashirus, or Inyan, like the Rebbe speaks over there about Hisaskos and Gashmias. Mashenk and the Meneira, this is the Inyan of Torah, and this is the Inyan of Hisaskos and Ruchnias, or in Chochmas HaTorah. So this is like a general concept, that we find up in Nigla, and in the Rishimas HaManeira, in Sif Samachay, the Rebbe talks about it. The Rebbe talks about it in Sif Pei Dalad. He also talks about it in Sif Ayin Hey. He talks about it in a different way. The Rebbe is Meidich in the Inyanim of the Shulchan being Misamal Oisher Gashmi. So that's Bechlal, that's from Chazal, and that's something that we see in the Rebbe's Torah. I don't think the Rebbe saw this Torah at that time, and could be there's something that the Rebbe and his father talked about at some point, but that's something that's found in the Rebbe's Torah. And what I found in Rishonim, and again I didn't have the proper time today, and I'm not happy about it, but that is what it is that it's a Medrash HaGadol. The Medrash HaGadol says that the Shulchan is a Zeichel Amon, which is the idea of sustenance. Now, in this much longer piece, the Rebbe speaks about man. The Rebbe's father speaks about man twice when he speaks about the Shulchan. So we know that the Ein of the man is the Ein represents the concept of the Ein of sustenance, the Ein of Parnasa. And there are multiple Mugdig Asichos from the Rebbe on the Ein of man, and how the Ein of man is Meramaz on Parnasa, and why Dafka the Ein of man is Meramaz on Parnasa. The whole idea that Parnasa is a nes, and that we have to have betachan in the Eibishter, and that's why it was made in that way. It was made in a manner that the man fell on a daily basis, and nobody had a pantry, because the Eibishter is teaching us how we have to look at Parnasa, and we have to know that everything comes from the Rebbeinu Shalom. So the whole concept of sustenance and is connected to the man. And the Medrash HaGadol is Meidach that the Shulchan represents the Ein of the man, and he touches a little bit on the Ein of Parnasa as Ashiris. But in the Sefarno, which the Rebbe would quote many times, the Sefarno says clearly that the Shulchan is the Ein of Shulchan Malachim, and he says that the responsibility of a government or of a monarch is self-defense and economy. These are the two inyanim. So we don't have anything like that represents warfare or self-defense in the Mishkan, but the inyan of providing for the citizens. And the Sefarno says very clearly that the Shulchan is where the bracha of Parnasa came to Yidden. The Beinu B'chaya ben Asher also is Meidich in this inyan that through the Shulchan that was the shadish of bracha and parnasa, and through the achila of the lechem apanim of the kohanim, and through the kohanim having their svia, through this, that's how Klal Yisrael had svia. And there's also there's a lesson on Rishon called Rabbeinu Tuvia, who also is meirich in this inyan that the shulchan brings the inyan of bracha to parnasa. Okay, so this is like a little bit of background. In the notes, Reb David is mayor that in Eira Torah and Parshas Vayakel, the Tzemach Tzedek speaks about the shulchan as an inyan of birurim. So already it's like not parnasa in a crass way, but he already talks about it like in a refined eif, an inyan of birurim, of Malchus Datzilus, and that's why it's called the Shulchan Shel Adam Elyon, which is Yered Libiyah. And the whole idea of the Shulchan Shel Adam Elyon, which is Yered Libiyah, is Levar Birurim. So this is like a little bit of background to what the Rebbe's father is talking about. So the Levik is talking about this idea of the Shulchan. And Levik says, and I just want to give you the background because it doesn't actually say, and I couldn't find it anyway, it doesn't say Shulchan Hu Yichud Zun. The Rebbe's father says like this: Ki Shulchan Remez Al Yesed the Nukva. And I don't know if this is a chiddush. It's very possible that it's a chiddush, that what it says over here. I don't know. You have to look in Kisar Rizal. But the Rebbe father writes that the Shulchan is Remez Al Yesed Nukva, and the Rebbe's father is not mitzayint anywhere. And he brings three rayas and psukim. He says because it says K'maimer Shulchan Arachtili, which is a euphemism that's used. There's multiple euphemisms that's used when you get to the inyan of Ishus and when you get to Meitzah Shemra and other things. So you have this concept of Shulchan. And the Rebbe's father says that the Lechem Aponim is Sha'ala Shulchan, which is the inyan of Achila, is the inyan of Yesed the Duchra. And he brings rayas for this. He brings Ve'echeles Imei Milele Shabbos, with Tzadik Eicheles Seva Nafshay, and he brings down the Zoyar. So he says that basically when you have the Lechem Aponim that's being placed on the Shulchan, you have the inyan of Yesoid, and you have the inyan of Nukva, which is the Yichud, ultimately, of Zun. Because Yesoid is the Siyum Aguf, and that's the Siyum of the inyan of Chagas and Nehi. So since it's the Siyum of Chagas and Nehi, if you're placing Yesoid on the concept of the Shulchan of the Yin of Malchus, so you're talking about the Yin of Zun, the Pashtas already. But the Rebbe's father's Meidach also, and he speaks about the Inyan of the 6 Lechomim, the Lechem Aponim that was piled up 6, and he talks about the fact that it's Kofel, and he's been signed to a Zoyar and a Kisvar Rizal, about the Inyan of Vav and Vav Kofel, and uses multiple ways to demonstrate how the Inyan of Yesoid represents ultimately not only Yesoid, but ultimately represents the larger schematic, if you will, of the Yin of Zeid Ampin. Then on the bottom of Amud Reish Mem Beis, it starts off on Amud Reish Mem Aleph in the Haris LaMesichtes, and it's a long arichis about Abba Shaul and what the Gemara says, the lashon of the Gemara of Olav Mata Menashe, a Dion, and the Rebbe's father goes back and forth. I mean, the Marmakemis that fly here are crazy. It takes a normal person many hours to go through line by line to figure out what's going on over here. And this interspersed constantly with Chidushim over here. The Rebbe's, he's quoting things, and then he says something which doesn't really say anywhere. And then he quotes. Anyway, so towards the bottom of the Reish Mem Beis, the Rebbe's father addresses, after demonstrating, improving in multiple ways, and again, I'm not even sure how many new things it says on this page. The Rebbe's father says that the lechem hayatzarich liyas ala shulchan tamid. So we know from the Gemara that when they used to put the kohenim, used to put the lechem on the shulchan, that you didn't take off the old lechem and put new lechem on, but actually they would put the lechem on, they would slide the new lechem in as the old lechem would go off. And I didn't have time to figure out if the actual the tubes were between them lachatchila, or they inserted them after. For sure, the posts that were supporting on the side were not there. That obviously was something that had to be taken off. And whether they took off the lechamim, when the new lecham came on with the tubes in place already, and then they just lifted them up and put them on the shelves, or whether they put after, I'm not sure. It could be the Gemara talks about it again. Levashti Hamaruba. It was partially impossible for me to be Mayan today. I just got back. So Akopanim, what we do know from the Gemara, this is very clear, is that the lechem has to be on the shulchan at all times. K'meshikasov, lechem panim lefonai tamid. So since the Torah says lechem panim lefonai tamid, so the Rebbe's father now speaks about this al pi pnimis hanyanim, that lechem panim lefonai tamid is ki hayichud tzarich li is bitmidius. Ki ein lahafrid. This is the Lashon HaKedesh of Rebbe Levi Yitzchok. Ki ein lahafrid yeseidu malchus zeh mizeh chas v'shalom. So I'm saying like a ha'ara that there is multiple descriptions of yichud zun in Torah, where we have this emphasis on not making any interruptions. Probably the most famous one is that you're not allowed to be mafsik ben geula to tefillah. So geula is the union of zun, and tefillah and tefillah is the union of malchus, and it's like one of the famous ones. But there's multiple places where it talks about not being mafrid between the yichud of zun and of malchus, or of zon nukva. And in modern day language, it would this is the electromagnet, and if the system goes down, if you're mafrid between the union of zun, the union of za and nukva, the system goes down, and if the system goes down, so then it doesn't work, we can't be sustained. So you have to have this, you have to build this electromagnet, you have to put together the za together with malchus, and when you have the za, the yichud zun, that's when the system is in place, and that's when parnasa is coming to us. So now the Rebbe's father says like this: "V'hoyu daled snifim shel zav mifutzalin mereshein sheyosemcha behem beis l'seder zeh or beis l'seder zeh." And in the copies they quote a pasuk, and they quote a Mishnah, the Mishnah Menachos that speaks about this. And there's various ways that this is drawn out. I don't think anybody knows for sure what mefutzel, in what way it was mefutzel. The most common drawing is where you see the supports come together on the bottom, like it's in the drawing of that they were mefarsim now. It's one of the drawings that's out there. And you have basically like the supports divide in three. They branch off in three. There's two on the side and one central one. And that's what the supports look like. I've seen other mefarshim draw it like I think maybe even the Kahaschomash, I remember seeing it where they draw it like a straight line, and they have just like the shelves coming out either on a diagonal or coming out straight. I saw some depicted as almost like a board. I don't think we know, actually. I don't think we know that there were supports. We know that they were mafutzel, and we know that they were enabled to be able. There was like niches in them. They were able to receive these tubes. And b'pashtus, the reason the tube wasn't left round is that it shouldn't roll off. So they take a tube and cut it in half. So mastama, the flat side where the two ends were on the bottom, the round side, the dome was on the top. It's not gonna roll. The bread's not gonna roll off. There's a weight of the bread that is the lechem upon is weighing down, and therefore it's able to. It's the lechem upon him doesn't put pressure on one another, and it leaves a little bit of air in between. So we have this the way the Mishnah describes it, that we have these daled snifim, and the daled snifim have these tubes in between, which become like a shelf that lechem upon is on. You have the supports on either side, and the konim, these tubes that are cut in half, these konim and the half reeds of gold end up being chof ches konim. They end up being 28 konim. Yudalid l'seder zeh, v'yudalid l'seder zeh. Again, I don't want to say silly things, but to the best of my knowledge, nowhere in Torah did anybody actually talk about what this represents. Like, what does it mean, these snifim? What does it mean, these konim? Why is there 28? Why are they there? Pashtas, pshat is the snifim are there to support it, and the pashtas, they don't want to be mafred entirely between the lechem aponim. It was just to put a little bit of air in between. The lechem aponim be'etzim have to be connected, so therefore they were half tubes, and half tubes it was just on a pashtastic way, a very ordinary way. It kept the lechem aponim in place. But so the Rebbe's father is looking at this, and I can only imagine that every union in Torah is exact, every union in Torah is precise, and if it's important that these lechem aponim have to be in place and they have to be supported in exactly this way with exactly this amount of konim, there has to be some kind of deep message. There's nothing is stam kacha. On the level of pshat is pshat, and then it goes from madrega to madrega till we go to the union of seid. So we have to kind of figure this whole thing out, and I guess that's the premise. The premise is that the Rebbe's father is looking at this in a way. This is the Metzias. This is what it represents. So there has to be an explanation as to why it is, and we don't have an explanation. So this in this initial way is going to intuit an explanation which is based on everything I'll say. I want to interject with another. Maybe it's a very grubby maisa, but if, I don't know, for ordinary people, I think it's helpful. So I was many years ago. I was in the Sfarim Bigeleisen. I was giving a share then in Detroit, and I was trying to get as many Sfarim as I could in the Gemara. These days, you could listen to everything online. But those days, you had to actually use books. So I was trying to get all the Achreinim to try to figure out to say Shiur. So the guy he's trying to convince me. He wants to sell me a Torah Shlema. And I'm embarrassed to admit I was a kid. I was 24. I don't know what a Torah Shlema is. I don't know. Nobody ever told me you should better Torah Shlema. Really, if I would have learned the Sichos right, I would have known what a Torah Shlema is because Rebbe's been signed to it. But I didn't know what a Torah Shlema is. I'm like, I have 5 chumashim. Like I'm giving Shiur now in Gemara. I don't need a Torah Shlema. And he says, you understand what a Torah Shlema is? It's like every chazal and every pasuk. I'm like, yeah, whatever. He says to me, and it's just funny the way he said it because I only later understood what he was saying to me. He said to me, the Satmarov never gave a drasha without looking at the Torah Shlema. And I'm like looking at him like, oh wow, like shkoyach. That does not speak to me, my friend. You did not. If you wanted to sell me a Torah Shlema, that was not going to excite me. But whatever. I was like, okay, fine. But I later understood like. Whatever you're going to say about the Rebbe Elisha, he was a Goren in Torah. There's no question he was a Goren in Torah. And basically, he said a lot of wild things, but he never said something which is against Chazal. He had to make sure that he wasn't saying something which contradicts Chazal. So basically, before he would give his drasha, whatever he came up with in his head, he had to make sure to go over. And Torah Shlema was like a modern guy, Mendel Akasha. They told him Mendel Treif and they didn't like him. He had to make sure. The Peil Mamish, he did the work. He was all the Chazals are there. If you say something which contradicts Chazal, it's not a Dvar Torah, it's a Dvar Shtus. And I try to explain this. People in my community sometimes they think they have Kedushim and Torah. I'm like, my friends, we're not shy of the Chiddush and Torah. So, Kol Masha Talmud Vosik Osel Lechadash means you have to know Kol Torah Kula to be Mechadash Inyan that you know this is Torah. If it's Seiser Chazal, it's Shtus. I said you have to know Kol Torah Kula. Right, so you have. Everybody will admit in the world, from his supporters to detractors, if Yelish was a geinish mensch, and before he said something, it gewollt durchgucken auf jede Sache, selber steht in Chazal. I said the hafla of Rebbe Levik, who's living in starvation, he doesn't have. It's menafs and ignorant, like forget concentrate. He has kol Torah kula on his fingertips. And he knows he's able to say things which have never been said before in history. And he knows that it fits with every single chazal, in Pnimis HaTorah, in Galia the Torah. And he's writing with full confidence. It's astounding. It's pashut astounding. And the world doesn't know. And unfortunately, most of us don't know. They don't realize the hafla of the Rebbe's father. It is mamish, not miminho anushi. It's not miminho anushi that a human being should have such bikiyas in Torah. That a human being should be under such harsh, impossible conditions and be able to muster your knowledge of Kol Torah Kula and to be mechadash in Torah and to write it down on the margins of paper with a tiny bit of ink that you have because it's off the charts. Anyway, I'm sharing that because I think that most of us are very, very fleshika people and it's important for us to know this. So Akaponim. The Rebbe's father knows what it says in the Shainim. He knows what it says in Chazal. He knows how the Shulchan is viewed. He knows that Apli Kabbalah, the union of the Shulchan and the Lechem Aponim it's a mechanism through which the world is being energized, through which we're getting the concept of sustenance. So again, I don't know whether it says it's Yichud Zun or the Rebbe's father figures out that it has to be Yichud Zun because obviously if the Tzemach Tzedek says that it's the Shulchan Shal Adam Elyon and that and we have these Lashonos of Chazal, obviously it has to be Nukva. It's Malchus Atzilus, it's Nukva. So the Lechem Aponim are placed on it. Obviously there has to be Yesod, and there's like multiple gematriyos of by the way, Beis Pamim Lechem is gematria Yosef and Yosef is Yesod, and then he goes into and that connects to what he says before because he speaks about Menashe, he speaks about Ephraim, and now there's gematriyos upon gematriyos that crisscross with 10 different Kisvei Arizal where the Rebbe's Mitzayin, the Rebbe's father's Mitzayin, where the Kisvei Arizal is. It's crazy. This is it's unbeschreibbar. It's anyway. So he says now. So he says over here that Do we have this Seder Kede Issa B'Mishnah Sham? Fine. Pasha spells it out. Spells it out exactly how these were inserted and how it worked. Habeis Pamim Yudalit Kanim. So the Rebbe's father starts to say something for sure new, because it says Yeshleimar. So he says, okay, so we have Beis Pam, we have 2 times, we have Yudalit Kanim. So he says Yeshleimar, He me'abeis Yodayim de'ema. And here, and I don't know why, I tried to reach out to Reb David. I think he's in Almatah. Maybe he didn't respond to me. I tried to, I don't know why he left out the next 7 lines. He just skipped he skipped all these lines. I don't know why. I don't know why. I'm not sure. Anyway, but the bottom line is that the Rebbe's father is there is this concept of Beis Yodayim de'ema, which it says are koirim es yesoid hamalchus, in very like anthropomorphical sprach. So there's that these hands of bina, and these hands of bina, they actually they carve out the space. They carve out this well or the space for malchus to be. So what does that mean? First of all, I don't know, but I think what it means is like this. I think most people think of bina as analysis. So you have an idea, you have chokhmah, you have a creative moment, an epiphany, then you start to develop it. But it's actually not. It's not. I mean, it's not incorrect, but it's not correct either, because we learn in Chassidus that chokhmah and bina are trein rein le misparshin. So if chokhmah and bina are trein rein le misparshin, it's not possible to understand bina only after chokhmah. I have an epiphany, I have a baraka mavrik, now I have to analyze and I have to develop and build the idea by dissecting it. It doesn't make any sense. If trein rein le misparshin, so it has to be that together. Years ago, we had the famous Rabbi Dr. Twersky. He spoke. So I was speaking to him, and he said to me, he said, close your eyes. Okay, so I close my eyes, and he takes my hand and he puts it on something, and he said, my eyes are still closed. So what is that? I said, it's a key. He said, open your eyes. I open my eyes. It's a key. He said, how did you know it was a key? And what now? I felt there's a key. A key is a key. Like I could feel it. So he said, why didn't you say it's metal and then say a key? Why did you say it's a key? I said, well, because it is a key. I said, because he said, that's the pshat that says in Chassidus that Chochmah and Bina is trein rein le misparshin. It's a pashat, a very balabatische kind of mashal, but matzachein beinai, pashat the way to understand it. It's not possible for us to take Chochmah b'ta'arasa. You can't take an idea divested of some kind of description of the idea. Every idea has, it's like having a shalheves with it has to be kshura either to a gachelas, or it has to be kshura to a wick or to oil. You have to frame it in some ways. You come with an idea. Every idea you're going to come with, you're going to use a lashon. And once we're talking about lashonis and what you're talking about sprach, you're already in bina. Like it says in today's Tanya, you're going into Eis Hey. It's not possible to communicate without having language. And language is already details. So if you have details, you need details. And so the concept of bina is what frames an idea. The idea has to be framed in some way. And to frame something, you need to frame it positively. You need to frame it negatively. You have to know what it isn't. Otherwise, you just start mixing things up. And you have to know what it is. So to know what it is, that's yad yamin. That's the yin of chesed. That's the positive definition. So I want to communicate an idea. Here's an idea. Here's a concept. Whether your concept is a glass is half full or half empty, so you're already describing a glass. So you're describing half empty, half full, and that becomes a metaphor. And your glass could be a metaphor for whatever you want it to be, but you still needed to talk about a glass. And like it says in Hilchos Kalim that you have to have, that there's the tzura and there's the keli. And in order for something to be kabel tuma, it has to have a tzura. So when you look at a fork, you don't see a chunk of metal. You see a fork. A fork is mekabel tuma because a fork is a keli. What if you break all the fork? You break off the heads of the fork. It can't be used as a fork. So now it's not looked at as a fork anymore. Now it's looked at as scrap metal. So scrap metal is not mekabel tuma. Something which is raw can't be mekabel tuma. It has to have some kind of form. In other words, the form doesn't have mass. It doesn't have matter. But when you have matter, and you apply form, so then you have a keli. And the keli isn't inherently. It's not, the matter didn't really change. It's the same matter. It weighs the same ounce it weighed before or after, but now it's looked at in a different way. It conveys, it's conceptually something different. Bina is that tzura. You can't have chokhmah without bina. We don't know what that looks like even. We could talk about it conceptually. So every time you have to have bina, you have to have these two yadayim. You have to be able to define something. Forget about analyzing it and deeper definition and well understanding it well. You have to be able to hold it. You have to be able to define it. So it says in Kisvei Arizal says that there's a yin of yadayim de'ema. Okay, fine. And it says in Kisvei Arizal that yadayim de'ema, it's koydim the yesod of malchus. So the Rebbe's father now imports this idea from Kisvei Arizal, and he says that Yeshleimar, that the Yudalit Konim, this is the Yudayim De'ema, which are creating the possibility that there should be a basin. There should be something to receive the Yesod of Malchus. Without the Shtei Yudayim, you don't have a basin, you can't have Malchus. So if you don't have Yudayim, where's your Malchus? It doesn't work. And everything has to be precise. So just like the Shulchan is an image and a metaphor for Malchus, so that you have to have, even though we're talking about Yichud Zun, and Yichud Zun is all Amidis, and this is already in Meichen, you still have to have those Shtei Yudayim. So the Shtei Yudayim, Ve'ema, is a concept in Kisvei Arizal. But here the Rebbe's father is importing those in that inya Yeshleimar, that the base Pamim Yudaut Konim is the Yudayim De'ema. And that gives, he talks about Mon very interestingly. He talks about Mon again. And this is like, it lines up with the Medrash HaGadol, because the Medrash HaGadol says the Shulchan is the yin of Mon. He doesn't, of course, talk about all this, but he says it's a keli for the Mon. And in the Ha'aris on the back in English, they put the yin of Biyadcha Af Kedruchi, and now it goes both ways, and it's yin of Be'er. So there was Father cross-reference. I don't know why it's not in the Lashon HaKodesh. I don't know why it wasn't Mitzutut. But if you look in the Ha'aris in English, he does bring this down. He brings down the next few lines that the Rebbe's father writes. And he also biyadcha af kedruchi, and over there they bring the Mekredis from Kisvei Arizal, and the shaykhs of what that has over here. Why that kind of dovetails into the yin of Malchus, and why it's important to understand the clean of Malchus. And again, he mentions that it's a keli from Mon. Second time over here that it's a keli from Mon, which again, check, astounding. Exactly what the Medrash says. Okay, so then the Rebbe's father on Amud Reish Mem Gimel. Then his father comes back to, okay, so now, what does that mean? What does that mean, Yesh Leimar, that the Yud Daled Konim is Beis Yudayim De'ema? It doesn't even make any sense. Like, well, what do you mean? Yud Daled Konim is, how is that Beis Yudayim? So the Rebbe's father says, I don't know, it's just like unbelievable. The Boraka Mavrika, the creativity here is astounding. But again, like, against the background of Kol HaTorah Kula, knowing that it fits into everything that says everywhere. B'chol yad yesh heyetz. Af a hand to finger. So you have 5 fingers. Everybody knows a hand has 5 fingers. In heyetz bois, there's Yudalet Pirkin. Why? Because you have gimel in Dalet bois. You have 4 sections on 4 of your fingers. And then a begudel, then in the thumb, you have beis Pirkin. So b'meila, the hand is made up of these, so to speak, of these pieces. Now the union of the sections of the finger enables the fingers to close. Otherwise, our fingers will be like flat. The concept of grasping something, of fingers that close, really is a very binadika thing. It's very binadika. That's how we grasp something, and that's how you mold it and understand it, and you go into the pratim. The whole idea that our fingers being able to bend that way, that's how we grasp. That's how we're able to hold something. That's very binadik. So the Eibishter makes that the human body is a bedugma shalamayla kaviyachol, and by analyzing mipsari echze, which is understood, like the Rambam says, by understanding the consciousness of a person, but in Kabbalah, the anthropomorphism is taken in a quite literal way. The Mela, since you have on each hand, you have the concept of these prakim, so there you have your hands now. And then the father says, that b'neisif, that the mispar hakonim is lines up to the yin of yad. B'neisif lozeh, and this is like haflo b'tei haflo. So al derech zeh b'hakonim, in the way the konim are lined up. Kamekein ba'adalad avidim shebein hachala tarteina ben hachala harvius hachala chamishis. So he says between the chala on the bottom was betara shel shulchan, that was on the gold itself. But then when you have after that, you start to have these konim that are inserted in between, which create the yin of avir. Menachem gimel konim, menachem these gimel konim, and that's in order to create avir. Vehem leneged adalat that's boys. Because the achat agudel, you have 4 fingers. So 4 fingers have 3 sections. So if you're going to have the yodayim, it's almost like you could kaviyochel, like imagine the Abish's hands that are holding the yin of the lechem. Kavyochel is tutuv the minyan the yichud, and that was like another detail. Everything fits like perfectly. There's perfect symmetry where the hands are holding the lechamim, the lechem aponim. So when you have hands holding, you're going to have 4 fingers, which is 3 sections. But the top challah, the Mishnah says, since there wasn't as much weight, there's only weight of 1 challah. So in the top challah, there was only 2 konim. So which gives you a sum total of 4 of the konim. Between 4 of the avirim, you have 3 sections, 3 konim corresponding to 3 sections that are on 4 fingers. And then on the top, which is keneged the base pirkei agudel. And it's just like, it's like wow. It's like and this is all chadash. This is all mamash new. This is, nobody ever thought of this. Nobody ever talked about this. Nobody ever wrote about this. It's it's a tiny piece, by the way. It's almost like a derech agav in a much longer rumination, which is mainly an analysis of the Mishnah with Abba Shaul and the details of Abba Shaul and Abba Shaul's name and Abba Shaul and the gematria of Abba Shaul's name and why he brings that pasuk and why the Mishnah doesn't bring a different pasuk, and how it crisscrosses with Menashe. And then, by the way, I don't know why this is, again, it's not in the copies, but in Omid Esham Gimel, the Rebbe's father in Sugraim adds a very interesting thing. Va'hefresh shebein shulchan lebe'er. Dort hat man wegen a shulchan und dort hat man wegen a be'er. So l'chayda be'er and a shulchan are not the same kind of thing. So the Rebbe's father says Shneihem roimzim al Yesod Nukva. Both of them are remes for the union of the Yesod of Nukva. Be'er shaboy yesh mayim v'hu lishtia v'shulchan hu achila. So we know that union of achila, in order to have the union of svia, which is brought down, the Rabbeinu Bechaya ben Asher says that you have to have the svia of the koyanim. That's what brings the union of svia and parnasa. So you have to have that union of svia. So the union of svia, the Rambam says that if you don't drink, if you only eat, you don't drink, that there's no union of svia. And actually, the Rambam holds, the Rebbe spoke about this once, that if a person only eats bread but he doesn't drink water, that you're not mechuyev min ha-Torah to say birchas hamazon. You're only mechuyev midrabanan. Just like when a person eats less than a pachas make a shear, there's only mechuyev midrabanan. And when I learned this, and I remember I remember by Fabrengens, the Rebbe, when the Rebbe would wash, the Rebbe would always make sure to drink. It was always, you always saw that, was always only when he would wash. Otherwise, it was a l'chaim, but he would wash, there would always be mayim over there. And the Rebbe would drink water, and he would eat bread at the end also. The Rebbe always made sure to drink from the water. Stam, just a very, very interesting thing, a very interesting nekuda. The Rebbe's doch even also easy judgment, and everything is exactly the way it's supposed to be in Shulchan Aruch, in the most mohudic way. The Rebbe was always very careful to make sure to drink. So you have to have, when you have achila without shtia is not satiation, and you have to have svi over here. So b'meila in Malchus there has to be 2 madregas over here. In this union of Malchus, the way it becomes the basin or the mechanism, the diffusion point through which Parnasa comes, there has to be both the union of Be'er and there has to be union of Shulchan. And the Rebbe's father notes further, this is again just wild. The Rebbe says that the Be'er, that in Yesod Duchra, the Yesod Nukva, L'pa'amim nimshal achila, or l'pa'amim nimshal ishtia. Sometimes in Chazal, the yichud zun is talked achila, kim halechem ashoechel, and other things like that. And sometimes it's told in of shtia, and here the Rebbe's father quotes the Gemara in Seif Gittin, the mashal mikais. That's been when somebody finds a mum, and later he says that he didn't know about it and he wasn't aware of it. So we say that it's a chazak al-adam that he's basic in the kais sheshoisa. So we see in Chazal that Chazal called the union of Yichud Zun. Sometimes they use the mashal of lechem and use the mashal of the shulchan, like Arachti Shulchani, and sometimes use the mashal of kais and of shtia. So the Rebbe's father says that here you have both inyanim. Here you have mitzad echad, you have the inyan of a shulchan, and a shulchan is bread, and a shulchan is achila. But leidach, you have to also have the inyan of shtia that's merumas. So the in of shtia is merumas here by saying that the snifim on the sides are the beis yodayim the ema hakoidim yisoid the malchus. Koidim yisoid the malchus l'chayr is the in of a be'er, and like the Rebbe says afterwards in B'yod Chaf Keruch is in of be'er. It's the in of be'er, not in of shulchan. So there's actually another unbelievable, derech agav, like an unbelievable chiddush that comes out, that l'chayda, if you have this idea of svia, and the svia is, if the shulchan is supposed to be svia, and the shulchan only has achila, so it actually doesn't work, because al pitera svia only comes when you have achila and shtia. So and by giving the meaning to the snifim, and by giving the meaning to the konim, and because the Rebbe's father connects it to the says in Kisva Arizal that this is the Beis Yodayim of Ema, which are kodim, the Yesod the Abba. So it noch hakashavet veremfert. Now you understand how the Shulchan works. That you have both the inyan of lechem as well as the inyan of mayim. This also becomes a representation of mayim as well, and so it's like chiddush agabe chiddush, and this is mamash kama shuris. Take the unbelievable kedusha Torah of Rebbe Levi Yitzchok Nishbas Eben. Anyway, hopefully this whets our appetite, and we start to learn the Rebbe's father's Torah as the Rebbe wanted us to learn it, and we should be zeicha to hear Torah Chadasha, Merz Hashem. Sehen Sie mit dem Rebbe Merz Hashem und sein Besuches Tevis. Rebbe soll den Aussagen von der schwere Golos, was wir gefunden sagt, und der Schuss und Chof Av soll megen sein auf uns, and may it spirit us out of the Cheshach Kafel and Mechupel and bring us into an inyan of Sevilla, an inyan of Eir, an inyan of Bias HaMashiach, B'mhedo B'meinu Amen. Thank you to the Maganim for the Schuss. And